I'm Wade Sankey. This is the Sankey Rodeo Show podcast from the cabin right here on the ranch in Sankey, America. It's not going to get any better than that. You just will go. Bobby, thanks for coming.
Yes, sir.
World champ.
Yep.
How many times the NF4?
18. 18 team roping, 8 times steer roping. So some of them throw them together where it's 26 times, but that's the official number.
Yeah. Sheridan College rodeo coach.
Yeah. Yeah. What a surprise.
Yeah.
What a surprise.
So I've asked you this question before, but I think we should ask it here too. Why are you a rodeo coach?
Well, I told you then, and it's still the same. It's not changed. One is, it'll take a second to kind of explain it, but, you know, I've taught roping for 40 years. I'm 63, so really more than that, 45 years I've taught roping. So through all over the United States, everywhere, I keep doing schools, do a couple still to this day. So when my kids went to school, same thing. They go to school and the coaching was somewhat. If you wanted to rope, you could rope. If not, so I always felt like it should be better. Okay, we should be better. So when the opportunity to go to Sheridan came around, it's put your money where your mouth is type of deal. They approached me about doing it, and you know what? Yeah. And I do love it. I do enjoy it, but that's the reason. I always said it needs to be better. Well, if I'm going to sit there and bitch about it, like the guy sitting on the other side that's never put a rodeo on, I need to step in and help do what I said, which I enjoy every bit of it. But that's really how it started. It fit in perfect at this time in my life. We run yearlings at the ranch in the summertime. My winters are open, so it worked really good to do it. So, and another passion. You know, guys like us are driven by goals. You know, that's a big thing. You're driven by goals, and this probably be my last legacy type of deal. You know, my last challenge would be this right here. So, yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell. That's how it kind of come together.
So, what surprised you that you didn't see coming with the coaching job?
Well, the biggest thing with the coaching is dealing with people, and I just mean everybody. You know, different ways of life, different thought process people. You know, I'm cowboy, I'm rancher, I'm pretty simple about my thought process. Kids are different. The kids are different than what you see at schools. Like when I go do a 2-day school or 3-day school, now you see them, it's a different time. Mm-hmm. You know, their life is different. The things they have are different. So that's an adjustment period. And then the biggest thing that I have to say is, do they want it as bad as I want them to have it? That's what you have to get used to. I want you to be the best you can be. I want you to win everything you can win. I want you to get a good education. I want you to be the best you can be. And you have to accept the fact that sometimes some of them can't do that. They've gotten better, but maybe that's not their end goal.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the biggest thing that I've had to kind of step back and take a look at, and then regroup on how to approach it, and it's great. It's simple. You know, the fundamentals. It's a fundamental deal, as you know. If you don't have good fundamentals, then how do you get better? So I really stress our fundamentals, and when they get them down, then we talk about different aspects of it, the winning part of it, the losing part of it, the financial part of it. So
yeah,
that's kind of the way it is.
So how did it all start, your life?
Well, I was born in Sheridan, raised in Gillette. Our ranch is north of Gillette. Like I said, it's been in our family 100 and some odd years on my mother's side. Dad's from Fort Washakie, Eastern Shoshone Indian. So they rodeoed. You know, Dad rodeoed, grew up on our family ranch, like I said, north of Gillette. Mom rodeoed in college, and then Dad made the steer rope finals 4 times, rode broncs, barebacks, bulls, roped calves, bulldog.
What's your dad's name?
Nick Harris. So that's how it all begins. And then when you begin on a ranch, you know, we didn't have a TV. We did, but the channel may not come in for 2 weeks because the TV line got blown down.
Yeah.
So you spend all your time outside, roping the dummy or whatever, ranching. We worked. And roping was something Dad did. So, every night when we were kids, the hired hands, he'd have 4 or 5 high school kids working through the summertime. But every night in the evening, we all roped. Hired hands or nothing, whether they roped or not, they got their horse and they roped.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that every night. And Dad tripped steers and whatever he was doing. So we roped every single day. So it was always a passion with me, as a kid. Rodeo was everything to me. That's all I wanted to be, was a rodeo star. It just, I don't know. Every kid wants to be a famous basketball player. You want to be a baseball player. You want to be a whatever it is. But I wanted to be all those. But I want to be a rodeo cowboy, and shoot. I can remember going behind the chutes and seeing Larry Mahan and Bill Smith and Joe Alexander and whoever it may be. You're just in awe of them because they're the rodeo cowboys. Because you only got to see them in life. You didn't get to see them on Facebook or anything. So.
Yeah.
That's kind of where it all started, passion. I don't know how anybody can honestly say that I was going to do this, but it just turns into a passion, whether, passion ranching or whatever it is. But it was always my passion was to rope.
Yeah.
That was just a passion. That's what I wanted to do. High school, we only had 2 or 3 junior rodeos in the summertime. It's not like now.
Yeah.
We had 2 or 3 Little Levi rodeos in the county fair, and that was it. That was your rodeo season.
Mm-hmm.
So you geared up for those ones like that, and then school would start, and then you'd take the winter off, play basketball and whatever, and you'd start back up in the spring and ranching, and then you'd go to them summer rodeos. And then when I was about 12, 13 years old, I started jackpot team roping a lot. And the reason was I roped good enough that the adults would take me, and I was heading back then. So I always told them, I said, you guys, I'm a great header. You don't even know it.
Yeah.
And they laugh at me because I heeled, and they made me heel because I heeled better than they did, just because I had better timing, not because I could catch more, but I had better timing. So I was really forced to be a heeler. And so from that time on, when I was 12, I was going to full-grown men jackpots till I started rodeoing, So Dad tripped, so we went to Wyoming steer ropings, went to all the, Cheyenne, Douglas, Lander, and everybody from the South came up. So you got to see all the world's champions. They all roped together at the Wyoming Association. So I was around steer ropers more than I was anything until I was, 14, 15 jackpot, and then you started getting around a little more in the jackpot world.
So who are some of the steer ropers that you're talking about?
Well, let's go with, at that time, Walter Arnold, Don McLaughlin, Tuffy Thompson, Olin Young, Sonny Davis, my dad, Dewey Lee David, Jim Moore, Irv Alderson was one, Dave Bliss, Jerry Kaufman in this country. Then you would run into Troy Fort, Jim Bob Altizer, Hall of Fame guys that roped calves, world champion calf ropers, and then just a numerous bunch of other trippers that would just come along with it.
Yeah.
But those were the guys, Alan Keller, 2-time world champion. So the ropings were something they didn't have in the South because it was hot. So they would come up here and spend the summer. So we was around them all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys were just...
Come camp.
Yeah. They'd come to the house. We'd have a steer roping school, and Olin Young put it on. So you just became friends with them. You just knew them. So that was one thing I always said that helped me going forward when I started rodeoing. I was not in awe of anybody by the time I started rodeoing because I'd already been around the greatest ropers in the world.
Yeah.
So I was very comfortable.
Yeah.
There was no, oh my goodness, look who this is. I'd already been through all that because we knew Joe Alexander. How can it get any better than that?
Mm-hmm.
We knew Bill Smith. We knew Fred Larson, Frank Shepperson, all these guys. Billy Denz roping calves, in the 70s. J.C. Bonine, John Forbes, all the old-time bronc riders that everyone, I don't know, some of these kids should know them. I'm going to give them a quiz at school anyways on that, on some little bit of, you need to have some history. You need to know who these guys are. They were great. And so that was one thing that was really easy for me. I was comfortable around great ropers, great cowboys, So that was a huge deal for me, because then I'd go home and rope the dummy nonstop. I had a rope on a set of horns, and we'd be haying or fixing something, and Dad would send me up to the garage to get another tool, and I'd stop and rope the dummy. And he'd come around the corner and holler at me what I was doing, and I'd have to drop my rope and go back in there, and I couldn't remember what I was supposed to get.
Yeah.
So I come back with who knows what, and most of the time I was wrong, but that's the passion. Mm-hmm. That's what I try to talk to these kids about, the passion of, I couldn't go buy that dummy without roping it.
Yeah.
I was roping something all the time, so that was a huge deal in my young life, and then roping calves and,
Wait a minute.
Did all that.
We got to talk about the passion first. How do you teach passion?
You don't. I've tried to teach passion. I've tried to figure out how to talk about it. Passion is, there's just something you'll see when they do something they're not told to do, that you're asked to do, you can see the passion grow. And that's why I say it doesn't have to be in rodeo. It can be in anything. Mm-hmm. I don't care what it is. They may not even know it's a passion, but what they'll find is this takes all their time up, their mind. When they're thinking about something, they're thinking about it. And then when they're doing it, they're tinkering, trying to find the right way.
Yeah. That's
what I did in my passion. You did not have to ask me to go gather the steers. You did not ask, I have to go saddle my horse. Now, if you have, and I tell the kids, my kids, everybody, if you have to be told to go get your horse to go rope, you're not passionate.
Yeah.
I can remember, and I try to use examples of people of things, but I have to be careful because I don't know how they felt. And I'll use myself a lot in references because I know how I felt. I know how I thought. It's not a bragging thing. I know how I thought about this situation, so I can tell you truthfully. But if I try to say, like I'll use Tough Hedeman, that man had a passion about bull riding. You could see it. And they said when he was a kid, which I didn't know him then, but they said he'd get on and get on and get on and get on and get on and, to get better. So that is truly a passion. Joe Beaver, roping calves. I know Joe had a passion because I did rodeo with him. Roy Cooper, but it's not just them. I'm just using their names because they were so dominant when they were young that the passion's what drives you. Stetson Wright. I used this the other day for these kids. I said, when Stetson Wright missed that horse out, as we all know, but come back and won the bull riding, and he said, they're not taking this away from me. I've worked too hard. I'm here to win. They're not going to keep me from winning. And I told him, I said, you guys, what you really hear him saying is I've worked, this is me. I'm going to win this because I am good, but I'm good because I worked my butt off. I tried to get him to understand that. That's what he was saying. No matter what you guys do, I'm winning this.
Yeah.
And he flat out told him, and when he said that on TV, I was just like, I told my wife, I said, now that, people need to hear that.
Yeah, that's a winner.
That's a winner.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan, that's why they all talk about him. Man, he did everything to win. No matter what type of person or whatever he did, that's passion. Mm-hmm. That's passion right there. So, yes, you have talent. You have natural talent. But some people don't have natural talent and still work to become very, very successful and win more. The old saying is, work, what is it? Because I don't even know, but work wins over talent that doesn't work or something like that. Well, whatever. Yeah. But I know D. Pickett told me when we was rodeo, and he was that way. He says, I have to practice. You don't. You may have the talent. You don't have to practice as much. I have to practice.
Yeah.
So everybody has their deal that they have to do.
Yeah. And there's so many different factors involved in every person's psychological game, physical game.
Psychological's tough.
Yeah.
Psychological is so tough because, when I came in this game, it's men. There was no kids. There was kids, but the men were winning everything. And this is their livelihood. So this is not about someone coming in and beating you. They're not happy about it.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not about pat you on the back. Oh, we're so glad you won. No, I have bills to pay. Mm-hmm. So I learned that way. They were tough. They were mentally tough. And I try to pass that on to the kids going, you guys, we're gambling. You're putting $1 up. You need to win $2. not just win 50 cents and be happy. If we won 50 cents and put $1 up, we lost money. So those are things that are really touchy. And however you want to say that the life people have made it this way or whatever, but not us. I wasn't. And I tell the kids that. I said, you all have everyone can win. How bad do you want to win? I said, no one's stopping you from doing what you want to do. It's only you are stopping yourself.
Yeah. What's it take to win?
Yeah, exactly. What the word is, what's it take to win?
Yeah.
Everything. Everything. Some people, they say, you're so broke you can't even go home. Well, I'm not going home. I'm winning. That person is like turning on a faucet and a little drip of water continually. Well, it'll wear a hole in a rock, but it's there every day. Every day. Same thing. If you don't win something, you knock on the door. I'm here today. I'm ready to do it again. Let's do it today. Then when you're winning, you get that confidence, and then you get on that steamroll, and it's like, watch out. The only thing is it doesn't last forever. When things start rolling, you need to roll. Mm-hmm. Because everyone's good. Everyone has the opportunity to do it.
Yeah.
So,
but once you've learned to win once, you can learn to recreate it.
That's exactly right.
Take the next step.
Next step. And it's not a given. And just because you did it yesterday doesn't mean you're going to do it tomorrow unless you put the effort in. Mm-hmm. Those are the things teaching them to. We'll catch a steer, they'll rope a calf, they'll whatever they do. Watching them ride broncs. That's awesome. You did good. You made a great ride. That's over.
Yeah. It
is short-lived. So that's why it's such an important thing for them to be able to understand that. It's just a thing. It really is just a thing. And I learned that after winning the world. Because I come up close 3 times. I don't know if you want to go into it now, but I come close 3 times, and that lucky team of Jake Barnes and Clay O'Brien Cooper beat me, which I tell them all the time. But you know what? They were better, and they worked harder. They did. And when we finally won it, I left there devastated, like, I wonder if I'm ever going to win this thing. Man, I didn't reach my goal. But you know what? When I won it the next day, the sun come up in the east and it was going to set in the west. Mm-hmm. All I did was accomplish what I wanted to. So that was not a bad thing. It was a great thing, but it was like, hey, I got to keep going. So guys that win can win several championships. I tip my hat to them, because, and like I said, maybe that was because I was towards the end of my chance of winning championships that I felt that way. Because if I'd have won it early, now the next 4 years of rodeo might have been a different type of deal. But like when they win, Sage Kimsey winning 7 in a row, or Speedy and Rich winning 8 in a row, man, that's not luck. That's good.
Yeah.
So that's what you're trying to pass on. I'm trying to pass all this on to these kids, and I got to be careful because they'll get overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. They really do. They get overwhelmed. I got to back myself up because I get excited. I'm like, I'm pumped. I want you to do good. I want you to kick butt. And you got to just feed it to them a little bit. And like right now, I'm so proud of these kids because when we practice, I can just sit back and watch them. They know their fundamentals. They're getting better riding. They're handling their ropes better. They see better. Vision is a huge thing. Like roping. Well, you wouldn't think when the gates come open, a lot of them black out. I can imagine in the rough stock when them horses are going to blow up and buck, a lot of them black out. But imagine the ones that don't are the ones that's winning. I don't know Stetson Wright at all. I've never met him. But watching him, I'm just using him. But I'm sure when he nods, he's not blacked out. I wouldn't think you would be.
Yeah.
So any of it. So you're used to the shock and awe of it. Same thing roping. You're used to the shock and awe. And then that's when you can really, really focus,
Yeah. Okay. So you talked about the thing that you didn't realize until you won the world. You didn't realize it till you won the world.
Right.
How do you get somebody else to realize it without winning the world?
Well,
I mean, you kind of explained it, but can you explain it better?
Well, what I'm kind of trying to say about that is we think world championships are everything, which I think you have to have that mindset to win it. You have to put everything into it because it is a time-consuming, money-consuming thought, life.
Soul.
Everything comes second. Your family, everything. It takes everything from you, that's what it takes to be that champion. Mm-hmm. But when you're done, what kind of person are you? What are you going to do after that? This was your personal accomplishment. That's what it was. And a lot of people around you love it because they know you. They experienced it with you. And I believe that 100% because of my community in Gillette and everywhere. A lot of friends, you win it, they're happy for you. But I'm happy to win it for my community, for Wyoming. You know, being the first team roper to win a world championship out of Wyoming is huge to me because I'm proud of our community. You know, I'm proud of where I'm from. I'm proud of who I am. But after that, there's always life after. And what you did before doesn't make you who you are in the future. You know, I always, and a lot of people say it, but I said it too, rodeoing's what I did. It's not who I am. Okay? So rodeoing, I'm a world's champion, Hall of Famer. That's all fabulous. But now I'm a rodeo coach. So now I'm trying to teach these kids what we did. You know, I'm trying to teach them what we're doing in our event, trying to teach you to get your education, trying to teach you to understand your finances, to help you go be a world champion if you want to, or help you go be a weekend cowboy if you want to, or help you if you don't want to rodeo at all. At least you got to experience it and get the education so you can do whatever you want to in life.
Yeah, because this crosses over. It's not just rodeo.
It's not just rodeo, especially now because there's so much expense, so much. So with that, you know, the rodeo when I rodeoed was fabulous. I could not have wished for a better time. Gas was 30 cents to 70 cents. There wasn't even diesel pickups yet. We didn't have living quarters trailers. We all rodeoed together in a single cab pickup. Hotel rooms were $30 and $40. So it was really cheap, and the rodeo still paid pretty good. You could win. You could make a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And back then, they made their money before they ever made the National Finals Rodeo because the finals didn't pay much.
Yeah.
You know, so you had to have had a good career before you rodeoed at the finals.
Yeah.
You know, like the first finals I went to in 81, I think I won $1,250 for the first round. The first year I ever run at an NFR, I won the go-around, and it was $1,250. And I don't think I won much money after that the rest of the week. But heck, there was rodeos I went to that paid better than that.
Yeah.
You know, so I always try to tell people, go rodeo to make a living through the summer. You should make money rodeoing through the summer. Then when you get to the finals, that's your gravy.
Or if you don't.
100%. And how many cowboys do we all know that are fabulous cowboys that chose to be weekend cowboys, that didn't make the finals, that had great careers, that made a lot of money, that were just as good as other ones, just chose not to go.
Yeah.
You know, and that's huge. And Vegas, with all the money they got, fabulous. What a wonderful deal. But now everybody throws all their money in one basket, hoping to get there. And then if you don't win anything, now you're upside down. That's the only thing that I worry about.
Yeah.
You know, I really, when they get done, they're like, I don't have nothing and I'm really in the debt, you know.
Which I think happens a lot more than people realize.
Well, yeah. I mean, and I don't know the numbers, you might, but how many cowboys this year went that didn't win very much money, that are good cowboys, but just didn't have very good finals? You know, like I said, I'm just using kind of off the top of my head. What about Sage Newman? What'd Sage end up winning, where he usually wins $200,000? I mean, I don't know what he won this year, but don't think he had the finals that he usually does.
Yeah, I don't
you know,
pay any attention to it, but
that's the way. And you look at some team ropers that went there that are good teams, didn't win nothing. You know, it's happened to me several times. You know, you go there and win a little bit, or you go there and don't win nothing, and that's what's tough.
Yeah, tell them about your first NFR coat.
My first NFR coat.
Yeah.
Well, my first NFR coat was the white one. Did I tell you about the white one?
Told me about the windbreaker.
Yeah, it's a windbreaker.
Yeah.
It was a windbreaker, and it's really cool, but it's a white windbreaker, and it had your number on the side with your name, and that's what you got. And you were so happy that you got that. You could care less. You got your number. You got that. I think it's a size medium. If I put it on now, I could get it on one arm. It's all. My wife wore it at the finals retro night. I don't even know how many years ago when we went and watched, and it was cool to see it because like Dick Yates had his there, and you could see some of the older cowboys, they still had those coats too. But
yeah.
You want to talk about cool. Now, the next coolest coat that I ever had was a Heston coat, and it had the furry collar, and it had the Heston emblem right here, and it had your number.
Yeah.
Everybody wore them like they was the warmest coat, and they weren't. You'd freeze to death, but I'm wearing that thing every single day. No, it was so different, you know. at Oklahoma City, I was lucky enough. I went to Oklahoma City. It was at the Myriad. And they'd moved it a couple of years before at the old fairgrounds, so I didn't get to go to the old fairgrounds. It was something. We had 2 perfs on, I think, 2 Saturdays. I think you had 2 perfs. Now you have them on Thursday on at night, blah, blah, blah. Well, then you run one at 1 o'clock and one that night, and the horses were kept underground underneath where the Myriad was right there. That's where you kept all your horses, and you had a tunnel that walked over to the hotel, and you had to buy your own room.
Yeah.
You didn't even get a free room, but it was awesome to go down there. It was quite an experience to be able to go.
Yeah.
So different.
So, like right now, roping is centered in the South, in Texas, Oklahoma, Arizona.
Yeah.
Was it like that when you were starting?
Yeah. When I was roping and as a kid watching all the ropers, Bob Feist, which is a rodeo announcer, Hall of Famer, I believe. Bob's in the Hall of Fame. But anyways, he had a newspaper called Roper Sports News. And he had a article in there called Rona Barrier. And this is, old people understand, there used to be a lady that had a gossip column about the world, about Hollywood and everything. Well, Bob would have this article, and it was Rona Barrier. And they'd talk about all the teams that were roping together and where they were going and what they were doing. That's the only way you knew about them. And I was glued to it. I mean, they had big ropings in California. So California, Arizona was the 2, New Mexico a little bit, but those were the 2 big team roping places. You had to be from one of those 2 places to really be a dominant roper. So that's the first time I ever heard about Walt Woodard and Leo and them, because they'd been rodeoing, but Leo and Gerald and Walt Woodard, Doyle Gellerman, Jim Wheatley, all these guys that some people don't even know who I'm talking about, but were great California team ropers. Arizona, Dale Smith, Art Arnold, all these older guys. Al Bach came along. But that's how you got connected to these people. That's where you had to go. So when I'm a kid roping, we had a 80 by 200 indoor arena at the fairgrounds in Gillette that had no insulation. And we would rope in there, and it'd be 20, 30 below, and you'd put your coveralls on and come in and rope. Every Saturday, you'd go to the rope, and you go to Broadus and rope. And that was about it for indoor arenas. They had one over in Rapid City, Hartshorn's Arena, little bitty 70, 80 wide by 200 long that we'd go rope in, and that was it. So you went and roped wherever you could. So if you were going to go be a team roper, you had to go south for the weather to rope with them and stuff. And so there was no Wickenburg. Like now, everyone goes to Wickenburg. No one went to Wickenburg back then because it was cold. It's not up in the valley. It's away from the valley. Where we all stayed was down around Queen Creek, Levine, and Scottsdale, and all that country down there is where we were at when I finally went down there. So, and they had one big rope in there. It was Roar's Rope-a-thon. It was a 10-steer roping, and everybody'd come from wherever to it. And another arena called Dynamite, Jim Riley's, I believe, Dynamite Arena. And then I think it was Elmer Reed's on 34th and Baseline. And those were the arenas where they had lots of ropings. Now I'll bet you there's 200 arenas down there they have ropings, but that's kind of where it was at. And then they started limiting people. That's when they started saying you couldn't come and rope. You're too good, you can't rope. So that's when it all changed. But that's really when everyone realized you could rope for a living.
Yeah.
And that's what changed that. Then they'd go to Florida. Some people would go, like Dennis Tryon and them would all go to Florida and go down there because no one roped very good.
Yeah.
It was kind of a social deal. You went to the roping because it was a social deal.
Yeah. And
then that changed, because these guys had come, and even when I was a kid, I'd win something, but not, those guys were good. So.
All right, real quick, we got to pay some bills. Got to say thank you to the Bozeman Stampede, Bozeman, Montana.
Folks, the Bozeman Stampede, greatest rodeo in the world, maybe the universe. Huge crowds, beautiful bulls, riders tougher than my Twitter feed. Other rodeos, sad. This one wins so much you'll get tired of winning, but you won't. Believe me.
So you talked about being around steer ropers, but did you go to college?
I went for a semester. Yeah.
Okay, that's all.
That's kind of like rodeo semester. Yeah.
Yeah. Who how did you get in? How did you get in with the guys that you're talking about, the Leo Camarillos, and
Well,
like where?
okay, so how I started was Toby Dickinson, which was like a brother to me, and Kenny Daigle was a school teacher in Gillette, Greg Marsh, Foreman, Arnie, Craig Mater were from Broadus. They were jackpotting a lot. And back then, on the weekends, they'd have a rope or every other weekend. They may have one in Shoshone. They had one in Cody. They had one in Meeteetse. Just in central places, ropings you'd have. So me roping, so by this time, I already knew about team roping. I mean, it's like my dad told me one time when I was very young, he says, now this is how the Camarillos heel steers. He says they're roping them when they jump in the air. And my dad stood there and he said, when I jump in the air, heel me out of the air. That's the first team roping lesson I ever had in my life. So he jumped and I roped him out of the air. Mm-hmm. That's how it started. So from that point on, when we would go home, and I would be doing it anyways, but I wasn't very old, maybe 7 years old when he told me this. So I was young. So then we'd be trailing bulls because they walk. So I'd rope the left leg. I'd rope a horse's left leg. Anything that was walking for a timing to rope it in the air, that's what I did. So then as I got older and started roping, I was heading. Like I said, I headed, but then when I would heel, I could catch them better heeling when I was 12 and 13 than the adults could.
Yeah. So
they switched me around. They made me be a healer. So then I start jackpotting, and I couldn't catch 3 or 4 steers in a row. And the ropings were either 3 headers or 8 headers. But they paid a lot of go-arounds. Well, I made a living winning go-arounds because I'd throw fast. Mm-hmm. I was going to throw fast. So that's how it all started. So I'm jackpotting. I have my card when I'm 15. Okay, I get my pro card when I'm 15, tripping steers. I won the rookie when I was 15. So then I can enter all the rodeos. So I'd go to Denver with my dad, and maybe Greg Marsh would go with me. But I didn't really go rodeoing at all. I roped more calves than I did team roping because I didn't have a PRCA team roping partner, or RCA at that time.
Yeah.
So, but I'd go to those jackpots, and I'd win a lot. And I worked at my heeling a lot and got to where I could heel better and better and better. So all through high school, I won the state championship, won the reserve champion in high school with my brother in the team roping, and just team roping is what I was going to do. So when I graduated from high school, I graduated at semester my senior year. And after that, I went down and stayed with Dick and JD Yates for a couple weeks or a month, and we roped. And JD really helped me with the finer tunes of taking that next step. I already had it, but he just fine-tuning you. So then I go through the high school rodeo that season, and then it's kind of a funny story about the college deal. I had full ride scholarships everywhere, roping calves. I roped calves pretty good, and team roping. And I had full ride scholarships to Durant, Sul Ross. Those were the big rodeo schools back then. I just didn't want to go to school. I wanted to rodeo. So I'm sitting at the ranch after Labor Day weekend and been jackpotting, and come in there, and Mom comes in, and I'm probably laid on the couch, I think. And she goes, well, are you going to college? And I said, I don't think I'm going to college. I don't want to go. Well, she says, well, that's fine, but you aren't living here anymore. So she kicked me out right then. So I go load my pickup up, and I drive to Torrington and go to school because I got a bunch of buddies going down there. So I go. I have a great fall. I'm winning the calf roping, the team roping. But I go to the finals. This is where this kind of changes. So when I'm at college, I get 3 phone calls in 1 week with guys rodeoing that want me to start roping with them. Well, JD Yates called me first about Scott Larimore, which Scott has been family friends of ours. They have a ranch up at Arvada. His uncle did, and just knew him. So I start roping with Scott. Well, the first weekend we go, and he says, you may have a chance to go to the finals because you could pick your partner to go to the finals back then.
NFR.
Yeah, NFR in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
So we go to Eads is the first rodeo I went with him. We won it. We drove on down to Abilene, Texas, and won the second round, and then drove over to Albuquerque and placed in both rounds, won second in the average. So the first week of rodeo, and I won like $8,000. I could almost qualify the finals myself. I'm never going to be broke again. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I'm a rodeo superstar. So then I go to the finals, and come back and school starts, come back, go to some college rodeos too. Maybe I think I went to Laramie and Torrington. Then the California run starts. So then we go to California. Well, we win some money and in the standings really good. Well, you know, the first thing on my mind is I'm going for the world. I have no chance of winning the world at 19 years old. Not even close, but I think I do. So I just stay out there and I don't come back to school. So that was my college deal. I was doing what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So that's why college was not a big deal. I was going rodeoing. Okay. So that's how that worked into the deal. So that's how my rodeo career started. And then Scott and I made the finals in 82. And then 83, I didn't have a horse and roped with a friend of mine, that Toby Dickinson. And then from then on, I changed partners to Jay Ellerman in 84. And then from then on for 10, 12 years consecutively made the finals, you know, but that's how it started.
Yeah.
You know, you just get exposed and then the right people show up and then passion. The passion is what carries you that far. You know, I can remember there's always levels, whether people think that the good guys go through or not, you do. Like, where am I at? Where do I fit in with this group? So when I made the finals, I'm like, all right, I made the top 15. Okay, that's all right. But I'm not as good as those other guys. You know, what do I need to do to be as good as them? So then pretty soon, okay, I'm top 10. Then I'm top 5, and then pretty soon you're like, hey, I'm as good as there is. I'm as good as anybody. That's when your mindset changes, and then your partnerships change, and then that's when your opportunities start rolling. You know, they always wonder why everybody's swapping partners all the time. All you're doing is looking for the combination. Mm-hmm. It's all you're looking for. If you get the combination and it works, you need to stick together. Because I did it, T and I did it, but you'll split and do something different thinking it's better, and then you'll come back together. And usually the second time you come together, you'll just dominate because you realize this is the team.
What you had been missing.
Right.
Yeah.
The mindset and it just, wait a minute, this is where we need to be.
Yeah.
And that's why when you see these special teams, special bronc riders, special bull riders, calf ropers, barrel racing, you know, you see these special people with these horses and stuff that are good riders and they don't last forever. That's why I always say about Charmaine, the greatest thing about her and that horse, 10 times in a row.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that was a great horse, but that's a great rider.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, Ty winning all the rough stocks, and then Trevor winning his all-arounds and doing all 3 of those events. You tell me that guy ain't got passion?
Yeah.
You know, and to be good at 3 of them, mm-hmm. You know, so that's why it's so neat to see some of these kids coming along, you know, like Stetson, watching him. Like I said, I've never met him once in my life, but watching him and watching his eyes and watching him, how he handles himself, what he's thinking or whatever, he's on a different level.
Yeah.
You know.
What about the horsemanship?
Biggest thing you got to have. Biggest thing. One thing that helped me in my horsemanship was ranching. Riding lots of different horses, cowboying, using the cowboy way. Horses were not, there's good horses, don't get me wrong, there's always been good horses, but I think now there's a lot of good horses. You can still make them better, but there's good horses, but they define you in the timed event. You can be as good as you want to be, but if you don't have a good horse to help you do it, then you're going to be below the top guys, and that's been proven time and time again.
What did you learn from riding ranch horses?
Well, you cross a draw, you chase a yearling, you ride your horse, you feel your horse, you learn to ride with him, you learn to help him, you know. Now, I'm not going to say I learned the finer arts of a horse by no means, because I didn't. You know, like I always said, they said, well, what breed did you like to ride? I said, I like to ride the one I won money on. Mm-hmm. He could be a 3-legged Appaloosa with no tail. If I could win on him, that's what I'm riding.
Yeah.
Where now I think the breeding is important, as it was then, but it just wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
Where now you can breed for one maybe and it works out for you, but then I had to have them now. You know, I had to have one right now. I was not the person that could have one that's 4, 5, 6 years old and wait for him to be 7 or 8. You know, and I used JD a lot because they did do that. JD's had lots of good horses, and that's what they did. They trained horses as they were at and where they rodeoed from. So he would always have some horses coming along. He did it the right way. You know, But like I would buy horses to go because I'd burn them up. You know, if they were too young, I'd mentally burn them up because I'm just using you is what I'd do. So, you know, I talked to them kids about that. There's a boy that's roping calves right now. It's got a young horse that has really come a long ways, and he's like, you know, he wants to go. I said, you got to get off the left. You got to break away. You got to do these things. I said, this is how you make a horse. I know how to make a horse, and I have made horses, but it wasn't I preferred when I rodeoed.
Yeah.
That's what I wasn't doing.
Time and a place for it.
Time and a place. And mine wasn't at that time. Mine was to go rodeo.
Yeah.
You know, so, because I've had several young horses now I've made and sold that are good horses because I had the time. I'm not pressing them.
Yeah.
So, like I've watched you with your bucking horses, the same thing. You know, the shoot, you know, the shoot in them, same thing. The fundamentals of it, getting them relaxed, getting where they leave right, where they get a good go, giving them a good chance. You know, the horsemanship of it is huge. So you see it in everything.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing with me. The good ones stand out. They stand out. They're the ones that you're like, oh, I wish I had a little pasture full like you. Well, everyone feels that same way.
Do they stand out instantly?
Yeah.
You know right away.
You'll know right away, and then some of them you'll do it just the opposite. You'll turn them into a practice horse, and then you've done it by repetition. Pretty soon they're a better horse than what you were riding.
Yeah.
Because they needed that. That's the way they worked. They just worked out of repetition.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they weren't. Some of them will outthink you. Some are too smart. Some are too athletic. You know, you may get too much. You kind of need one that's just a workhorse. You know, that's just going to show up and do his job each and every day. Because if they get to outthinking you, then you know.
Yeah.
They'll cheat you.
They're going to think about what benefits them.
That's right.
Yeah.
They're just a horse.
Yeah.
So they're smart thinking that way. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's like you said about your Mexican blackbird. You know, when we pet him out there, we just love it that he comes up, you know, and he just rubs on us. And then you talk about how he is and stuff, that he'll get nervous because he's just like, what's going on? But you're petting him out there by the water, or we're gathering him and whatever. And he's just standing there and you're like, I mean, he just literally laid his head on my shoulder one day. And I'm like, what is going on? You got to be a colt. And then they said it was that older horse. Yeah. I was like,
big dummy.
Yeah, it was funny. I really enjoyed that, though.
Yeah. So, we covered a lot pretty quick.
Well, you know, the biggest thing about this whole rodeo deal is it's not what I invented. Mm-hmm. You know, everyone thinks that when you're talking about something or you're trying to coach somebody. These are not things I invented. There were no schools when I was a kid. It was all trial and error. You tried it. You watched someone. I'm over the fence. Walt Woodard was great to me when I was a kid, and I bugged him all the time. They'd come to Sheridan to the rodeo, and I would see him. They had a big roping called the Watts Memorial, Bob Watts Memorial, and they'd all enter. And it was a big deal because they was enter twice, and those guys would all rope with each other. So you got to see them rope because you don't get to see them. There was no video. There was no nothing. So you got to watch them rope. And you know me, I'm going to go up and say hello. We were raised that way, to go up and introduce yourself. And I went up and talked to them, and then they would know me from me roping, you know. But just like that, I asked questions and trial and error. I mean, I would try it. I would try this. I'd try that. It didn't work, or this worked, or, oh, I get it. We all do the same thing. We're just trying to explain it maybe in a different way for people to grasp onto it.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's what we're trying to do. That I learned. All the things I'm teaching is what I learned over 40 years of rodeoing, and I'm passing it on. It's not what I invented. It's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'll use a perfect example. In the 80s, they had great big steer roping, invitational steer ropings in Texas. I was living in Texas. And at the rodeos, I could rope pretty good and win really, really consistent because I'd reach a little bit. So the cattle were out in front of me. Well, you go to these ropings, they were 4 and 5 head ropings, so you didn't have to reach. Well, I'd get too close and I'd split the horns, and it was costing me. So I went home one day and got my dummy out, and I got to thinking, who handles their rope and ropes with the best finesse that there was in the steer roping? And it was Don McLaughlin and Arnold Feltz. And when they swung their rope, they swung it with finesse. It didn't look like they were in a fight with the rope. And it's not that I did, it's just that I just wasn't doing something, and I couldn't figure it out. Well, I watched them, and they would slow their swing down and place their loop. Once I learned that, changed my roping. Changed it 100%.
And you learn that from watching them?
From watching them, because there's no school. See, so you watch them, and I'm watching, what are they doing that I'm not doing? And I stress that to these kids nowadays. I'm like, watch people. I learn by watching. Watch, what are they doing that I'm not doing? Doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, but we're going to do the same things to a degree.
Yeah.
We all go do the same things. So with that changed it. So then I could catch whenever. I could reach, I could run close, I could do whatever I wanted to then at that point. And that was in the 80s, later 80s. So then when I went to heeling, it was the same thing. And you have your opportunities come around on who your best partners are. If you get better partners. That's just the way it is. So in 84, I roped with Jay Ellerman. We had a great year, won a lot together. So we get to the spring of 85. We hadn't won a lot. So it's a funny story. Doyle Gellerman and Walt Woodard were world champions in 81, but they were really one of the first teams to do a lot of schools. So everyone knew about Gellerman and Woodard.
Mm-hmm.
So we're standing at the finals in 84, and just out of conversation, I knew Doyle, and we was just visiting, and I think 84, Dee and Mike had won the world. So we're sitting there, and got our hands on the fence looking in there, and he's going, well, they won the deal. And I said, yeah. And I says, well, when are we going to rope? And he looked at me, and he goes, you mean that? I said, you bet I mean it. But it was just conversation. So later on that spring, he calls me, says, were you serious about wanting to rope? I said, absolutely. So there's the next step. I was going to get to rope with the first world champion.
Yeah.
So he asked me, we have a great year. We won a lot of money. The pro tours are going on. So this is why it's always good to think you got something you need to work on, because later on in that fall, he comes to me and he goes, hey, I want to start roping with Ricky Green. We live together in California. We can travel, whatever. And I'm like, all right, I get it. Whatever. So at that time, I'm thinking T. Woolman had been roping with different people. He'd roped with Clay. He'd kind of roped with whoever, and they had a chance to win the world, and they'd split. And Jake was roping with Clay, O'Brien, Cooper. So I just asked him, and we was at Casper at the tour, and I went over to him and I said, hey, do you want to trip steers next year? And he goes, because he had been tripping steers, and I was a tripper from my dad. I said, do you want to trip steers next year? And he goes, yeah, I'd like to. I said, well, do you want to rope and we can trip steers together? He goes, yeah, let's do that. We'll rope at the finals and we'll take off. I mean, that Leo was hot. He was hot. So, but that was my chance.
Yeah.
T was the best header in the world, had been, already won 2 world championships, was phenomenal. It's the best partner I ever had. So at that point, I need to step up.
Yeah.
This is my chance to be, if I'm going to win a world championship or be the best healer there is, this is my chance. So my mindset changed at that point right there. I got to quit missing. I got to quit roping legs. I thought, well, for $1 million, who would you have heel a steer? It was Leo. He never missed.
Mm-hmm.
So I went and looked at what he was doing and tried to use the same things, position-wise, setting my loop down, quit splitting legs, and just quit missing. And I did, and I changed it. But at that point, that's what changed my whole career. From 86, 87, 88, we split up in 89, and then in 91, we roped again. We won so much money tripping steers and team roping. That was my greatest years of rodeoing, from tripping and team roping together, because we both did it. Mike and Dee both roped calves, and I think it really helped them to do another event. It takes the pressure off of just your team roping.
Yeah.
So if we wanted to turn out in the team roping, we could turn out and go trip steers.
Yeah.
And we both were winning, so it was good for both of us. So it was really a good thing to do.
Yeah.
So that's the point where at that time, all right, this is your chance. You prepared. This is where you need to make sure it's either going to work or it's not. And we had chances. I was reserve in 85. He was reserve in 86. We was reserve in 87. 88, we didn't. 89, we didn't rope together. And then in 90, we won the average. And then in 91, won the world. So, it just, that little bit of time right there was our time.
Yeah.
Had great combination. So.
Yeah. How bad does it suck having the dynamics between the team roping partners? I mean, how much drama is down there? Is it positive? Is it negative?
Well, let's always use this. Always use this is the very simplest way to put it. You and your wife can get mad at each other and have a conflict, and you can get over it. Team ropers, you carry it around. Because it's hard to have that conversation.
Well, it's business.
It's business.
It's life.
But you
It's
know,
rodeo.
at that time, that's the biggest thing. You don't think of it as business. You
Yeah.
can't approach it that way where you're young. And I mean that wholeheartedly, that it was no me too. It's not everyone else. It's me too.
Yeah.
But it is a business. And when you're switching partners, it's a business. That's what you're trying to find. And when you're roping together, it's a business. We don't have to be best friends. We can be best friends. We can be whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a business. So when you back in there, if you've taken care of your work and I've taken care of mine, so what if we miss? That's the chance we're going to take.
Yeah.
But we've created that together. So it's that's the best way to put it. But the other way about it is, oh yeah, you'll see a fit thrower, and we did. We all threw fits, and and it's just stupid, But not at the moment. It's not. You think that this is just life or death. I'm not going to make it if we don't win this rodeo or we don't win the world.
Yeah.
You kind of get overwhelmed with that. But like I said, now I know nothing about these kids now. Because social media and all that. There was no social media with us. You didn't talk to anybody else. I mean, you did at the rodeo, but you didn't see them. If you're traveling and gone for 5 days, you don't talk to them.
Yeah.
And then you'll some other team that you don't even rope with may be your best friend that you go see and visit and hang out, and then you go with your guy and do what you do and everything. But it's just kind of the way it is, I guess.
Do you, like with TE, you said it helped. Do you think that it helps you progress with somebody, or does it make it harder?
Well, T made me better.
Mm-hmm.
T made me better. Okay, there's no doubt whatsoever, because he's older than me by 7 years. Now I run with older people my whole life, so that was no problem. The age wasn't, but his business end of it, of roping for a living, was different than mine.
Mm-hmm.
He was way better at it than I was. I always knew in the back of my mind I could go home.
Yeah.
Right? I had a ranch I could always go home to. I rodeoed because that's what I wanted to do. He rodeoed because that's what he did do.
Yeah.
Okay, so I learned that from him on how to be a professional, how to practice better. I learned a lot what I teach now from him. He learned from Leo. Okay, so, and that's in the business part of it. I'll use an example. He said when he first went and roped with Leo the first time, he went to California. Leo says we'll rope at 8 o'clock. He gets there at 8 o'clock, T did, and saddled up. Leo's already been riding around the arena. He said, I come over and told, Leo says, where you been? What do you mean? You said 8 o'clock. No, rope at 8. He says, I got things to do. He says, I got other places to be. T said, okay. So from then on, he was never late again. So at 8 o'clock meant roping at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay, so like I use that with the kids when we practice. We practice at 6:30 in the morning with these kids.
Yeah.
And they're there.
That ought to weed them out.
Yep. Weeds them out, and then they're there.
Mm-hmm.
But then what they have done that they really like, they like the structure.
Yeah.
They love structure. And they're there. We clean the chutes when we're done. We clean the arena. We do it every day. But then we're done in 15 minutes. And we practice only may be in 45 minutes, but they've run their stock. But we do it every single day.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Instead of doing it once a week, we do it every single day. So back to T, if we weren't rodeoing, we were practicing. We took Mondays off. Get some cleaning done and get your horses vet work or whatever you needed done. But then Tuesday, we were back at it. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and usually left Friday to go rope somewhere. Because you could leave in the morning and drive down there in Texas to where you were going and rope usually about 1 o'clock. And then we rodeoed all weekend and then took Monday off when we come back.
Yeah.
So that was the structure. So I learned that, and that made me better, And rodeoing wise, we flew a lot, man. We rodeoed. I loved it. It was a great time. We chartered, we were rocking and rolling. Clay was rocking and everybody was rocking and rolling. You buddy with the team. You only buddied, not really because you needed to travel with them, because it'd be T and I, but you did it so in case you needed a charter.
Yeah.
And we weren't chartering jets. We were chartering 210s, not pressurized.
Yeah.
It's not like it is today. So it was just so fun to do those things. And, That's what I always talk to those guys, and we rodeoed at a good time.
Yeah.
We really did.
Yeah, which is what I was going to ask, because the era of team ropers you rodeoed with, like, those guys are legends.
Yeah.
And there were so many of them, and they lasted so long.
Yeah.
How come it's different now? You don't see guys going to the NFR 20 times anymore.
Well, one is I think the expense has a big thing to do with it. I think the expense of this deal is so high. Horses cost a lot of money. Your margin of error not winning is so tight now. I think that's a big thing. These kids rope great. Mm-hmm. There's lots of young men, I say kids, young men that rope great. That's a big thing now. Horses cost, my good heel horse that I talked about cost me $7,500. Okay, now that same horse, if I was to go buy him today and they said they wanted $75,000, I'd have to buy him.
Yeah.
All right. Now take a look at the standings. What does it take to make the finals? It takes $120,000 to be 15th or whatever the number is. With all your expense and to win that much money and to pay that, there's not much room for error and there's not much profit. None. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I believe that has a huge thing to do with it right there. Because they get in and they're pretty soon they're like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not gonna be in such a hole that I can't get out of it. Heck, our credit cards back then were only $250 limit.
Yeah.
You know, now they get $25,000 sent to them 4 or 5 cards a month. Mm-hmm. You know, so they just got you where they rodeo. You just rodeo your way into a hole. Yeah. Entry fees are so much higher now. You know, like I said before, there were rodeos I went to when I first started that were $30, maybe $35, and then it went up by the added money. If you went to a rodeo, it was $100 fees. That was a big rodeo. Yeah. That was a big, like Cody. Yeah. Might have been $100 rodeo back then. Now I think it's $300 and some. You know, we're roping at our own money. Yeah. Which is wrong again. Mm-hmm. You know, we shouldn't be roping at our own money. We should be roping at the added money and whatever our fees were, but we shouldn't be creating that added money. You know, so I think that's one of the big factors is the expense of this deal right now. Yeah. And, you know, team ropers now can be a low number team roper and make more money than a pro. Yeah. So there's a lot of incentive not to become a pro because it's tough and it's very expensive, where they can go to one roping in the summertime or in the winter at Vegas and it pays $200,000. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Know? So they put up $2,500 or $5,000 or whatever, which is a lot for one deal. But if you win it, paid $200,000, you just made more money than the world's champion did. Yeah. You know? Yeah. What about outside money? When did that come in? And how much has it changed? What do you mean by outside money? You mean sponsor money? Sponsors, supporters. Well, is that what's affected the value of the horses? And people don't know the value of a horse. They're paying more. They just pay for whatever. Instead of going, I only can spend this much money. I got to stay within my means to buy this horse. And that's been a big question. Where's all the money come from that you can buy $100,000 horse? You know, I don't have $100,000 to buy a horse. I mean, even to go get it. You know, back in my day, you'd borrow the money to go borrow a horse, and they'd only want to lend you $500 because that's all the value was. Kill price. It was just a ranch horse. Yeah. They didn't know anything different. Mm-hmm. But back to the sponsorship deal, you know, I think, you know, when I won the world, we got a bonus from Wrangler. Dodge trucks, they quit giving Dodge trucks that year. They quit giving the Frontier or the United or Frontier Airlines ticket that year. Mm-hmm. They quit the bonus deals when I won the world. Before that, I think they got a $25,000 bonus, a pickup. They got airline passes. They got some things that were really, really nice. Yeah. That worked. You didn't see anybody with the Wrangler shirt on except the world's champion. Yeah. They were the only ones. And then, so then you start seeing a few more people starting to get some of them, you know. I think Ty really changed it. Ty Murray. Yes, Ty Murray. MGM, I think, was his big deal. Like, you know, I don't know the numbers. The word on the street was like he got $500,000 for 5 years, $100,000 a year. Mm-hmm. And the saying was he could put it away and didn't rodeo on it. So he had that investment. He'd invested $500,000. That was huge. Whether it was or not, I don't know. But if it was, awesome. If it was more, even more awesome.
Yeah.
But he won enough. He didn't have to rodeo on that money. And so that's what changed. D. Pickett had it in 84. He had it with Stetson cologne, Stetson hats. You know, he had some things that were pretty good. Roy Cooper, I know at one time had Walmart boots. So there was a few of them around, but it wasn't everybody.
Yeah.
And then now you go, and there's more writing on people's shirts than there is anything else. And what I found was my last year that I made them in 10, I just had some people that wanted to help me. I didn't even ask them, and they didn't want any signage on there. So that was the best sponsors I had, was 2 friends of mine that wanted to help, and I just helped them rope. And that was awesome. But I think it's fabulous. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it's a wonderful thing. The only thing that I hope that people do is don't take that money that they gave you and invest it back into your rodeo unless it's a tire company or a gas company or they give you a pickup. If they give you $25,000, hopefully you can take that and invest it in some land or in something. So when you're done rodeo, you've taken what you've earned in rodeo and it's working for you. Don't put it back into rodeo where it takes it away from you.
Don't give it to rodeo.
That's right. Because the bottom line is rodeo's a business. And if you're running in the black, it's a good business. If you're running in the red, it's a terrible business. And like I always said, nobody looks at their checking account.
Yeah.
Don't look at your checking account or you're going to scare yourself to death. Your account will fall over, you know, because that's what happens.
Yeah.
That's why I always say when we are really winning big and having good years and winning, you need to invest that money. Then when you get to that top and you start to peak, which is fine, but if you start to drop, let's say your horse is no good or he died or he's crippled or you tore your knee up and you had to wait a year. Now am I going to start selling those things to stay in the game, or this is the time I need to do something else? You know, that's what I really hope people see, because we all stay along too long.
Yeah.
We all stay too long. I stayed too long. You know, I mean, honestly, after I won the world and then from 81 to 91, I should have been done after that. I mean, I had some good years after that, but really my heyday was done. I just was still just living, you know, rodeoing. But my goal had kind of left. I was just doing it. Really, and that's where, man, if you're done, be done. Go do something else.
How do you know?
you have that really good friend that wants to give you that talk. You need to not shun it off. You need to, you know. You don't want to know.
You don't want to admit it.
You don't want to admit it. You know.
Yeah.
You know. The drive. Okay. 18 years old, I'll go to 200 rodeos. I don't care. I'll sleep in the back of the pickup. 35, I don't want to leave the house. Mm-hmm. Oh, they didn't get enough entries. Oh, I don't want to go over here. Oh, you're making me be gone? That's when you need to be done.
So did you get sour?
Yes. You all get sour. Whether they want to say it or not, you get sour because you've put all this into it. You've given your life, and then at the end you look around and I got a wore out pickup. I got debt. Now, I'm not saying you have to.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that happens, you know, and that happens to a lot of us.
Did it turn out different than you thought it would?
That's a really good question, because I really don't think in the beginning you even think about how it's going to end. You don't even think about what this is going to be like in the end. Regret is the biggest thing you'll always run into in anything you do in life, as we know. Man, I regretted not doing this. You can't have that. It was what it was. I did what I did. I'm going to, whatever it was. But that's where you come back and you try to mentor somebody. That's what I'm doing right now. That's what I'm trying to mentor these kids, coaching them, helping them be ready. Go put all you can into it. If it's a good business, you're in the black. If it's not, you can still rodeo. You just don't have to go pro. Or you can go pro, but you don't have to hit the road hard. You can still rodeo. That's the one thing I tell people that you can get away with is you can rodeo. Ivan Teagan rodeoed better than anybody, because if he had a great winter, he'd go and make the finals. If he didn't have a great winter, he'd go home and go to some circuit rodeos.
Yeah.
No big deal. He had other things going. But what we do is if we don't win anything, now we're betting on the come. And I can win at Reno. I can win those 3 weeks right there. Do you see how much money Cody O won that 1 year? He won $75,000 or whatever the number was, and went from 50th to 4th in the world. We all think we can do that, right? Oh, Cheyenne, man, now they've got enough added money. I can go from Cheyenne. I can go to Dodge. I can go to Hermiston. I can go Great Falls. There's enough money now. Now I can make it. We got the tours at the end of the year. Boy, I can just hang in there. And then you hang in. And maybe you make it and maybe you don't. But what I learned for myself was if I barely made it, I usually didn't have a good finals because I was hanging on through the year anyways. I wasn't just making it easy.
Yeah.
So that's what I learned, And those years you could have went home and then went back to the winter rodeos and done it again.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I say trying to find something else. And I think some of like I say, I don't know a lot of these guys. Maybe they are doing that. Maybe they've bought some income things to make some money or something. I hope they do, and if they do, that's wonderful, but that's something you need to do.
Yeah.
You have that big win, you need to take some of that money and you need to be able to invest in. So my dad told me when I started when I was 18, he says, hey, you need to buy a cow every time you have a big win.
Yeah.
You know what I said? I'm buying that stereo. Do you see these ostrich boots that I have on, Dad? Are you kidding me? But
yeah,
you know what? I'm going to be a rodeo superstar.
Yeah.
And things were cheap.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't think anything of it. That cow's only worth $500. Well, look at what Brad Germanson or whoever, all them guys, they win that deal at Calgary and they bought ranches.
Yeah.
So you just live and learn. You just hope that they don't make some mistakes that you made that you could, avoid. But, it's a life lesson. You're going to do what you're going to do anyways.
Yeah.
So that's why it's tough, though. Every event's tough because of the schools we've done. The schools that's been put on over the years has helped everybody get better. Video has made them get better.
Yeah.
A lot of homeschooling. They go on, they go places and rope and whatever. Which I'm definitely not against that by no means, but I think it fits and doesn't fit. But if you're going to be a rodeo superstar, then you'd better be ready for some bumps and bruises. Mm-hmm. Because they're coming, no matter what, no matter how good you are,
Yeah. Who's some of the favorite people you rodeoed around?
Well,
your favorite people.
My favorite people was I love the rough stock guys. I liked all rodeo guys, to be honest with you. But like Paul Tierney was always energetic. Roy Cooper was always entertaining. And loved to watch him rope. H.P. Evans, because he'd been in Hollywood. He'd done movies. He was just cool. He's a good guy to be around. Brad Germanson, Rick Smith, Clint, Red Lemmel, Wayne Herman, Kenny Lansgrave, Marv, all those, Mark, Larry, Deb a little bit. But see, Deb probably doesn't know this, but see, it'd be his cousins were my godparents.
Deb Greeno.
The Greenos, Pat and Peggy Greeno were my mom's. They had a ranch next to us. The Greenos did. And Pat and my mom grew up together. And then Peggy, she's a mankin from south of Gillette, which she's my godmother, which they both passed away. But so I have a little bit of rough stock in me, see, just like that but so just being around Larry Peabody, I loved Larry, and he was almost done when I was just getting going, but just watching him ride bareback horses. And I want to know how many of these kids know who Larry Peabody is.
Had him on the podcast just because of that. You got any Larry Peabody stories?
No, not really, because I didn't get to be around him. I just loved being around him. I just loved watching him ride. He just, man, he could spur those horses.
Yeah.
I was around Brad a lot because Brad liked to rope, and he was just witty, funny, so all those guys, I got to be around a bunch of those guys. Tuff and I are the same age. Cody's a little older than me. Ty was young. trying to think about, and then gotten to be around all the team ropers that were idols to me, because I got to see them and then being around them.
Mm-hmm.
Miles Hare, because Miles is from our country.
Where's he from? He's
from Gordon, Nebraska. That's where he's originally from.
Yeah.
So being down there is not too far from us, you know. All my idols were steer ropers, though.
Mm-hmm.
Olin Young, Sonny Davis, my dad, Don McLaughlin, those guys, because I was around them so much. Guy Allen is older than me, but Guy and I are good friends, and he, to me, is the greatest world's champion there's ever been. Okay, 18 world's championships in one event, and was reserved maybe 7 of them, and lost a couple of them by less than $5. That's the greatest world's champion there is. He dominated. They can talk about whoever they want to. He was by far the best. They said, well, could you ever win the world championship in the steer rope? And I said, absolutely, if Guy wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as he's around, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Phil Line, Larry Mahan. When I got to be around Mahan, that was awesome. That was a big deal for me because he was my idol. Everyone had Larry Mahan boots and his shirt and his hat.
Yeah.
Everybody did. Phil, because he roped calves and tripped steers and but he was quiet. He was different. He wasn't. But Mahan was still probably, like I tell everybody, Mahan's probably still the most recognized cowboy there is.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, all my buddies called me Mahan because they didn't know anything other than rodeo but Larry Mahan.
Yeah.
Had no comparison in what we did. Just that was the only people they knew about rodeo.
Do you think Mahan had more impact on the sport than Trevor?
Absolutely. Yeah, not even close. Not even close. Mahan, because he did an American Express commercial. Has any other rodeo cowboy done that?
No.
Not even close.
Yeah.
Jim Shoulders with the light beer.
Mm-hmm.
But Mahan just had that presence. I saw him at Binion's eating supper one night, and I was like a little kid. And I'd been around him my whole life. And I always told him, I said, you're my favorite, Bull.
Yeah.
You're just, you just make me feel better when I see you because you were everything. You were just great American cowboy.
Yeah.
Bill Smith, older, now later on in life when I got like Bill, I got to see Bill 1 week before he passed away. I don't know if I told you that. We were eating supper, him and Ed Miller, and Ed just passed away.
Yeah.
They were eating supper at the Rib and Chop in Sheridan. And I got up and went over and talked to him. And I said, Bill, we're bucking these horses on Wednesdays. It's when we had the blizzard last fall. And I said, come over here. Come over and spend the night. And we buck on Wednesday and come. And I want to introduce you to a bunch of these kids. I say bunch, we only had, 5?
Yeah, but they're good kids.
They were good kids. I said, I want to introduce you to these kids. I want them to know you. Well, they couldn't come because of the storm, and then he passed away. So, like being around Cody Bill, that was a big deal for me. And he always liked me, always cheered for me. He says, because you're a cowboy. He says, you're a cowboy.
Yeah.
And the team ropers were we were the stepchild, which is not the great word, to the pro rodeo because we weren't a full-time event,
mm-hmm.
So then when we finally got in there, but he was like, he said, it just always meant a lot to me, that Bill thought of me that way. And then so meeting J.C. Bonine, Hugh Chambliss, Bud Pauley, all them guys. You just said Jack Nystrom. I met them, the Canadians, the Hay Boys, the Danes. Dwayne?
Yeah.
Dwayne Danes, Rod Warren. Meeting all them guys like that. So meeting people was the biggest thing about my buddies. I liked them all. I got along with everybody. I liked them all, but just meeting those different people from different parts of the world.
Yeah.
I always got a kick out of Larry Robinson and Cliff Williamson. We went to Calgary, Dee and I and Joe Beaver and a bunch of us flew in to Great Falls and drove up there, and we had to haul butt to get there, and we got there and roped, and like I broke the barrier and was like 8, 9, and that's like being 20 up there. You know, they're fast up there. So we drive back down to Great Falls, but there's a bunch of us now getting on the plane going to Window Rock, Arizona. And we get on there, and me and Larry and Cliff are sitting kind of in a square there and drinking beer. And the sports news had come out, and it had me listed in the all around as $630 some odd won in the all around, where it was supposed to be like 63,000. And Larry sees it. Cliff, what about you? What about all that money you're making in this rodeo? I says, well, boys, listen, well, you're going to 1 and 2. I'm going to 4 and 5. I says, when you're working one event, I'm working 4 or 5 of them. I'm roping calves, bulldogging, team roping, beer garden. I said, I'm working them all. And that was the biggest joke we had with each other that night. So we get to Salt Lake City, and somebody gets on the plane and goes, hey, where you guys been? I said, we've been at Calgary. They said, well, how'd you do? I said, well, I broke the barrier for the 50. And they're like, oh, man. And they just walk on by and go sit down. That Larry and Cliff, they just loved it. They just roared because it was the slack. Rodeo hadn't even started.
Yeah.
We landed Albuquerque, and he comes by. He goes, hey, that ain't even started yet. How in the hell did you do that? I said, well, if I wouldn't have broke the barrier, I'd have won that 50. They never forgot that to the end of time. With it's those are the things that's fun.
Yeah.
You know, those are the stories that are just priceless that you would just out of conversation. You know, and those guys were funny. They were a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, that's a pretty good place to stop. You got anything else you want to add?
No. Rodeo's good. Rodeo's great. You know, I don't know what they're going to do in the future. I hope they do something good. We've talked about that in conversation, you know.
Yeah.
I hope they do something that's good for everybody, that grows it, that what's the next step, you know?
Yeah. If there was one thing you'd like to see them do and them is rodeo, what would that one thing be?
Well, I think that eventually, I think they've kind of done it. So it's not really stepping over a line, but looks like to me there's time for a division. You know, you got your great big rodeos, and you got your medium rodeos, then you got your small rodeos. To me, it looks like there's time to do something where we can grow our young kids, where they can go and learn how to rodeo and earn their way into them big rodeos. And then the guys that's been in there, if they're not winning as much, they drop out. I mean, we got to keep it fresh. So there's got to be some type of an answer. You know, I know golf has a rotation deal, you know, other things have them where you're in and out. And I just think it's that time. Mm-hmm. I think rodeo's changed. You know, everyone's going to limits because of the cattle. They cost a lot of money. Horses are valuable. It's entertainment. Now there's big groups. There's always a lot of concerts at these rodeos. There's a lot going on. It's not just the old county fair rodeo, which there's still plenty of places for that. But I don't know. I think there's probably a time that's going to have to come, because we have the biggest rodeo, and we know that's Las Vegas. We don't have to do anything there because it's sold out, which whatever they do, whatever goes on. But so we need something that builds up to that, really a big build up. So it's like the Super Bowl we just watched last week or 2 weeks ago, and it is the Super Bowl, but I don't know. There's got to be something. Some people aren't going to like it. Some are going to like it, but change is always good. And if you don't try something, you never know, so I hope they get their heads together and figure something out, because I don't know if some of the small rodeos can keep existing. I just, like I said, I don't rodeo anymore, so I just don't know. I don't have a touch with some of them, but I know that rodeo is an event. It's a great sport for us. Some people don't think it's a sport, but it's great what we do. But it's still a gathering place. It's a gathering of people that come together and watch people perform. That's how it started, and that's what it does. People come to, Cody, they come to Sheridan, they plan on going to those places. And I know they do in small places too, just in a smaller number. So Calgary, they go there, Cheyenne. So now we can go back and let's just use a different one. Let's use Livingston. I think it's sold out every time. Dillon, we talked about that. Rodeos that have created big things and keep them going. and make sure you got quality contestants that can be there as to turning out, and young kids getting in that are good. I think that's something we have to really look at. You know, like I told you, the hard part is when you're too old and you don't want to admit it, someone else has to. I just listened to football the other day, and they're talking about 33-year-old guys are too old to play NFL football.
Yeah.
Now, can you imagine that? You're 33, you're a young man, and they're telling you that you're already wore out.
Yeah.
They're not going to sign you to another contract. I'm like, wow, that's something.
Yeah.
So that, I know we're not in that way, but it's like, you know, you got to do something to help on the changes. So,
yeah. Well, thanks for coming.
yeah, thanks for having me. It's awesome.